relax. Observe and allow. Again and again. Deeper and deeper into our own experience. Present time experience. In these next few moments, just let go, relax, let go of effort, let go of trying, just be right here. Just be with whatever is. Peace, ease, struggle, pain. Can we accept the way things are? And I was thinking about what to talk about tonight, and I had several ideas. I'll try to kind of cover a few, but I think I want to start with the Buddha's story, because some of you may have heard it. But I've recently been kind of taking a different approach. Because the Buddha's story, Siddhartha Gautama, is a universal story. It's an archetypal story. It's the story of the hero's journey. And we're all the hero. And we all have this journey. And the archetypal kind of persona that the Buddha plays, and there's other throughout history. But there's some kind of elements to it, right? So see if this fits for you at all. That the hero's story, there is a calling. Some calling to practice, some calling to see things differently. There's some departure. Maybe tonight you were nice and cozy on your couch watching whatever TV show you like to watch, or video game, or whatever. Maybe you could have gone to dinner instead of coming here, so you made a commitment and you found your way here. Then there's some struggle, maybe just 30 minutes ago, maybe 5 minutes ago, during the sit. There's generally some kind of struggle involved in the hero's journey. And then there is a return. So this is the archetypal kind of hero's journey. So in the Buddhist context, or from Siddhartha Gautama's life, there was this calling and inspiration. And the inspiration came when the Buddha was kind of in his late 20s, early 30s. He was inspired to practice, to depart from his kind of pretty cush life. He kind of had it going on. He was a prince, he had 3 palaces, he had everything he wanted. But he saw kind of, so the way the story goes, he went out and he saw, a person who was sick, a person who was elderly or old, person who was dead, and then he saw a truth seeker, an ascetic, a sadhu. That was the inspiration, the hope that there's maybe something different. And so the way the story goes is kind of like that's the first time that he had ever encountered these things. But I don't believe that, actually. I challenge that. I think just in the same way that we have known about meditation, we've seen the struggle in our own lives time and time again, we've recognized our own suffering, but really weren't willing to do much about it until one day, one breakup, one job loss, whatever. Whatever it is that causes that inspiration for maybe there's something different. So I like to think about that as the calling. Something isn't right here. Something isn't right. That kind of maybe deep down feeling. Or we can maybe know, the government's out to get us or whatever for most of our life. Right? But until something, really shaking happens, we don't really get it. But then we do. And that's the way I see that, that's the way I think maybe it happened with Siddhartha. That he got to this point or this place where he was like, wow, there was this death, there was sickness, there was old age, and it's going to happen to everyone, even me. And that was an eye-opener. So this departure from the Buddhist perspective, there was a decision. And for us, maybe the decision is it known or it's unknown. There's this kind of known and unknown element or quality. There's difficulty along the path to depart. And this could be for meditation practice in general. This could be for just trying to do something different in your life. Maybe rebelling against the mind's tendency to do whatever the hell it wants. Just that. Departing from the norm. I was kind of talking earlier about, I've been talking actually around Halloween and stuff, like this kind of sleepwalking, this kind of zombie-ified state where we get kind of enchanted by things, people, places, and things. So there's this departure. So then the struggle. So the struggle, from the Buddhist perspective, the struggle of Siddhartha was the same struggle that we all are faced with, and this is what the Buddha talks about, and this is actually necessary part of the path. And it's in the story, it's the struggle with Mara, the confrontation, the battle with our ego, with the parts of ourselves that are fed by greed, by aversion or anger or ill will, resentment, and delusion or ignorance, kind of this sleepwalking. So these are some of the struggles. Right? One of the ways in which the Buddha was tested was through doubt. That Mara, this personification of evil, or death, or ignorance. Mara in the Buddhist mythology or cosmology is thought to be the one who pulls the blanket over our eyes, who keeps us locked in delusion. And that as we begin to maybe wake up through seeing, through our own experience, Mara comes in with these, maybe sometimes they're comments in the mind, like, you can't do this. You're not good. These kinds of, some of the chatter maybe that some of us hear. You're unworthy. This is the struggle that we all have to go through. Meditation is boring. It is kind of boring. But it does get better. Stephen Levine, my friend Noah's father, said, like 70s, early 80s or something like that, if you can't be bored, you can't be Buddhist. Right? This idea of like what is beyond that feeling of boredom. And that's really actually what the Buddha kept going when doubt came in. This like, oh, you're unworthy, or you shouldn't do this, or why meditate? That voice of Mara, or the ego. So then there's the return, this returning. Mindfulness, the word sati, means actually remembering, returning, remembering to come back again and again and again to this breath, to this moment. That's actually what we're doing here. We're not going anywhere during meditation. We're learning to be here, because this is all there is. But our mind likes to make stories and go places, doesn't it? It's weird. That's why I like to say, the mind does whatever the hell the mind wants to do. And this is a sort of mind training. We're training our minds to come back again and again. So whether it's the archetypal hero's journey, or whether it's just our own kind of story of having some calling to life, some calling to practice, some calling to spiritual inquiry. And then this departure. And sometimes, the departure, I remember for me actually when I can't remember, like maybe 19, 20, 21, something like that, where I would go to meditation groups. And my friends would be like, what are you doing? Like, I'm going to go to this meditation group. Like, you're lame. Like they would, it was like, you're lame, or you're, what do you do? Like, let's go hang out downtown at the mall for nothing and do nothing for hours. Like, cool, I'm good. So I had to depart from the norm. And it was a bit of a struggle too. People would tease me. But I kept going. Because I found something when I would sit. Just like when I was a kid, I found something in the forest at 8, 9 years old, 7, 8 years old. I still actually, for my whole life, I've been graced to live here and grow up here and come back here and go up to this certain area and have sat through different aspects of my life. It's cool to return. And see what's changed and what hasn't. So these are some things I was thinking about. So the Buddha, after his enlightenment, he had kind of one goal. And that was to free the minds of you. To free the minds of anyone who was willing to stay the course. That was his goal. And people would come, he's a philosopher, he's considered, up there, Plato, Aristotle, Socrates, Greek philosophers, there's many other philosophers. But he stepped out of just the realm of philosopher because he became really concerned with the alleviation of suffering. So he's often talked about as a doctor, or a psychiatrist, or the first psychologist, because he was very interested in the mind and the freedom from suffering that can be found through training the mind. And this is what we're doing. This 2,557-year-old practice of sitting with what is. Of course, it has lots of different names, right? So I like to think of the plan, the structure that the Buddha first came up with. Not long after his enlightenment, actually. He sat kind of wondering, after this battle with Mara, and then this freedom, this kind of relinquishing of suffering for himself, he sat contemplating, are people going to get it? This shit was hard. 7 years of struggle. Right? Struggling with the mind, with the body, with doubt, with remorse, greed, with all the different ways in which, with aversion, sleepiness, restlessness, all the different ways that the mind and Mara plays tricks to distract us from our true nature. So once he kind of got clear about that, he asked himself, yeah, I'm not sure people will get it. This was hard. This was going against the stream. My friend Noah Levine has made this a pretty famous saying, against the stream. It's fitting. When I first heard it, I was relieved. Because that's what it felt like, going against the mind's tendency. So he set out to find people with less dust in their eyes. He set out to find people that weren't so lost in greed, so lost in hatred, so lost in ignorance that they couldn't sit and see their own true nature. One of my teachers says, his name is Ajahn Pasana, and he says that there is a natural peace and ease that is the natural peace and ease of the mind. It's the natural state of the mind and heart. Peace and ease. We just fuck it up. By our thought processes and our attachments, by our ways that we cling. It's not our fault. It's instinctual. Ajahn Pasana didn't say that we fuck it up. Because he's a monk. He did say that we get in our own way, though. And so did the Buddha. So the structure, right, what's called the Four Noble Truths, can be looked at from this kind of psychological or this psychotherapeutic way, perhaps. If there's an ailment. There's an ailment. Something's not quite right here. Like a flu of the mind. And then there's a diagnosis. And then there's a prognosis. Prognosis is good, actually. Hope, there is hope. And then there's a treatment. So the ailment is like what we talk about all the time around here. Suffering. There is suffering in this world. And the other part of that, there's different aspects of suffering, but the way to think about suffering, there's lots of different ways to look at it, right? I like mental anguish is one of my favorite translations. Dissatisfaction. There's one translation that says a wheel out of round. The word dukkha can be also translated as impatience. So impatience is the cause of suffering. It could be. Or is the definition of suffering. Impatience. So the diagnosis is that, so there is suffering, this is the ailment. Seeing the suffering really clearly is actually some of the remedy just for the ailment. We have to recognize that we're sick, right? Or that we have flu of the mind. Let's just go with flu of the mind. Like bird flu or something. And the diagnosis is that we're causing our own suffering by selfish and self-centered craving. This is the Buddha's definition of the second noble truth. Selfish and self-centered craving. Seeing it, recognizing. There's a practice, an inquiry practice that I like to use sometimes, where you just use this phrase, I cause my own suffering by, and then you allow an answer to arise, and then you say the same phrase again for, as long as you can stand it. So the prognosis, from the Buddhist perspective, is that there's a cessation, there's a way out of this suffering. And then the treatment is the way out. And the treatment is to live in an ethical way, to stop causing harm, or at least to stop spilling the harm that we're causing ourselves out into the rest of the world. At least start there. To look within by meditation, this meditation practice. And then through the two, we're going to be gaining wisdom. Which is, there's like, wisdom. And then there's really knowledge and experience coming together, which helps us solve our own problem. This is some of the ways I like to think about the Four Noble Truths. Really, if something is called Buddhist, then it has to encapsulate the Four Noble Truths. It has to be, that is what is Buddhist. So I'm going to read this quote from the Buddha, which I also think is a direction. It's part of the treatment. It's called Master Yourself. It's from the Dhammapada. Master yourself. Love yourself and be awake. Today, tomorrow, always. First establish yourself in the way. Then teach others. And so defeat sorrow. To straighten out the crooked, you must first do the harder thing. Straighten yourself. You are your only master. Who else? Subdue yourself and discover your master. I just love that. I want to read it again. Love yourself and be awake. That's a clear direction. Today, tomorrow, always. Easier said than done, right? First, establish yourself in the way. This way, right? Meditation, and, in other words, don't go shouting from the rooftops. That meditation is the best thing going when you've only sat for 5 minutes, or one retreat, or, And so defeat sorrow. So what I love about this piece right here, first establish yourself in the way, then teach others, and so defeat sorrow. The sorrow gets defeated when we begin to actually communicate with other people, be of service, be in community. Then we're not so lonely. If we're just stuck in our own head. So, someone was asking me earlier, why come to a meditation group versus sitting at home? Well, sitting at home can be really helpful, but it's helpful to be in community, to defeat sorrow, to have some connection. We need each other. We do. It's the way we are as the human species. We need to understand who we are or who we're not. We need to connect with others in some way. And then we need to find some power to say some power that's greater than ourselves, whether that be Dharma or a God concept, whatever it is. These are the three things that we need. To straighten the crooked, you must first do the harder thing. Straighten yourself. I like that. I like that a lot. Because just like with compassion practice, right? It's so easy, well, for some people, right? It's easy to be compassionate to, the struggles of the world. Harder to be compassionate with our own suffering. So this is saying, before you jump out and try to save the world, save yourself. You are your only master. Who else? In other words, stop looking outside of yourself for the freedom from suffering. The freedom from suffering lies within. Master your own heart, your own mind. This is, of course, my opinion of the Buddhist teaching. I could be wrong. Subdue yourself and discover your master. Subdue yourself. I don't know, I think that means train your mind. Have some control over where your thoughts go. This is what kind of makes sense to me. So this first noble truth, seeing suffering, this is a practice. It's not just this kind of lofty truth, it's a practice. Seeing suffering within ourselves, within our own hearts and minds. And then seeing the suffering of the world. Also. And it's considered a noble truth because if understood, it can be transformed. And that's what we're trying to do here. Transform our hearts and minds.